The thought of going to prison isn't exactly the most soothing in the world. Being told when to sleep, when to wake up, when you can eat, and then trying to determine what you're eating while watching your back and hoping you don't take a shank in the kidney. Not exactly the ideal living situation, so it's no surprise that no one wants to be there. But sometimes, people who were stupid enough to land in prison show their stupidity trying to escape it. Join us as we have a look at some of the most dumbest criminals who tried to escape confinement and take another trip to the bottom of the gene pool. We start off easy with the story of James Russell, who was spending some time away from home in the Olympic Correction Center in Washington. Russell decided he wasn't happy with his accommodations anymore, and that he would get out of the minimum security facility with no more than a mild plan to borrow a phone from the first person that he came across. The only problem was, the first person that Russell came across was a guard who worked at the prison. Russell didn't even try to get any distance between himself and his cell and knocked on the first door that he came across, which was a mere short walk from the facility. After a brief struggle, he was subdued and returned back to his cozy cell. Maybe Russell would have had more success had he implemented the plan of Kenneth Burnham, but then again, maybe not. Kenneth Burnham decided his best bet for getting out of jail was to impersonate someone else. The only problem is that the person he chose to be was black, and Burnham is obviously white. He would go so bold as to sign 2 forms and a property sheet belonging to the other inmate, and sit quietly while waiting to be let through the doors. But then guards who knew the man to be released recognized the small discrepancy in skin color and would re-arrest him. Burnham would end up suffering 2 criminal charges for his attempted escape. Andrew Joseph Wilson is another high IQ inmate on our list, as his escape attempt defies all logic and intelligence. Wilson was sentenced to only 20 days in the slammer for his crimes of burglary, theft, and drugs, and was on day number 19 when he inexplicably did something so stupid it would leave even a simpleton scratching his head. While on work release, his impatience got the best of him, and with only 24 hours before his release to go home, Wilson stole a truck and tried to get away. Of course, he was ultimately caught and given even more time than he had before. But prisoners aren't only this dumb in America. The stupidity spreads all across the world. Like one now infamous prisoner in Brazil who got stuck in a hole in the wall while trying to make his escape. Now, most people who plan to tunnel out or get out via a small opening would spend weeks planning, digging, and ultimately trying to lose weight to make sure their plan went off without any issues. But one unfortunate prisoner out of a gang of 4 had obviously been hitting the commissary a little too hard, as on his attempt through the hole, he got stuck. So stuck that it was injurious, and he began to cry out and call for help. When the guards showed up to find him hanging halfway out, they actually took pictures of him to add insult to his injury while waiting for a rescue team to show up. Ranking high on our list of top prison escape movies of all time is The Shawshank Redemption, in which Tim Robbins delivers a highly regarded and epic performance of a man who escapes prison through unlikely circumstance. A man in Brazil got some great inspiration from the film and decided that he was as smart as Robbins' character Andy Dufresne, except that he wasn't at all. The man decided he would dig out of prison by tunneling under the community toilet, but didn't even make it more than a few feet before he encountered a clog in the system. He would be pulled out by his legs and probably earned a cute prison nickname for his efforts, like Smelly or Stinky. Or maybe you can think of a good one. Also in prison escape attempts that stunk, William Alves decided he was tired of working in the prison kitchen and decided he would excuse himself from his sentence by stuffing himself in a trash can, covering up with leftovers and rotted food, and would simply wait to be dumped. The only problem is, he isn't the smallest man. And when the prisoner that was sentenced to taking out the trash tried to move him, a weighty resistance, of course, was encountered. The prisoner wanted to investigate why the can was so heavy, and when he removed the lid, they found Alves squeezed inside. Also inspired by the media and their portrayals of high-class prison escapes, 2 men at a Louisville, Kentucky prison got the bright idea to tie a bunch of bed sheets together and slither down the outer wall of their facility. The only problem is, the men were either never Boy Scouts or sailors, because their makeshift bedsheet ropes failed them miserably. Christopher Cornelius and Matthew Johnson got to the roof, dropped their ropes, and then began the escape of the century. The only problem is that the knots they tied were done with the skill of a 4th grader. And midway through Johnson's descent, they gave way and he fell 20 feet to the ground, injuring his back and his ankles, causing him to be hospitalized. Cornelius decided he didn't feel much like Spider-Man and stayed on the roof where he was apprehended. And in a more conventional approach, 4 inmates at the Meade County Jail in Sturgis decided that rather than concoct some fancy scheme or escape plan, they would simply just fight their way out. At approximately 2 o'clock in the morning during a cell check, they decided to assault the guard making the rounds and then simply go blood sport all the way to freedom. They tried breaking out windows, which were designed to be shatterproof. They tried opening doors that are electronically sealed, and they made it as far as the visitation area within their corrections pod before realizing that resistance was futile and being apprehended. Being unarmed, having no keys, and no real chance against an entire prison full of guards, this was basically the equivalent of being in hell and trying to escape by punching Satan in the face and then running away from the bottom. Not a very well thought out plan. Ralph Wilson was equally as smart when he tried to escape the Ripley County Jail by prying some fencing apart. The only issue is that he tried to do it at 4:15 in the afternoon, in broad daylight, while the prison was hustling and bustling. Officers observed him trying to pry the fencing with a sock in the recreational yard, and then nabbed him before he could really get anywhere to place him in isolation. And hey, it had to be a foolproof plan, right? Because after he got through that fence, he only had 2 more tall fences layered in razor wire to conquer before getting out to freedom. And in perhaps the most creative and outlandish attempt at escape, a man who obviously did not have a pilot's license or a certification with the FAA did his best attempt at reenacting Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade when he and his cohorts tried a Hollywood-style escape attempt that even Michael Bay would be baffled by. The 51-year-old drug trafficker wanted out of prison, so his accomplices set up a camouflage tent 400 meters from the jail, equipped with motion sensors to observe the security measures of the staff. Once they had a solid schedule and plan, they loaded a remote-controlled Zeppelin with camo paint, climbing gear, and night vision goggles, and attempted to fly it into the prison yard where the inmate would equip himself, scale the walls, and then go to an awaiting car to be whisked away to another country. The problem is that a Zeppelin isn't exactly inconspicuous, and the guards obviously noticed the 13-foot-long device gently floating around the prison and into the yard. The suspect was taken back into custody along with his crafty friends, and this wasn't the man's first interactions with a flying craft, though. He was in prison in the first place for trafficking 400 pounds of cocaine in a small plane. So let's hear from you. Have you ever escaped from prison? Or maybe you know someone who has. Tell us all about it in the comments below. While you're here, be sure to show your support by subscribing and check out our video on the world's most luxurious prisons. Or maybe even the dumbest criminals. Thanks for watching.